All right. This is the first episode from Lights, Camera, Media, and today we will be discussing Benjamin's The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction and how his concept of aura connects to the film Analog Love. My name is Michael.
My name is Ava.
I'm Aisha.
I'm Peter. So we had to watch the documentary Analog Love, The Art of the Mixtape. It was directed by Robert Galuzzo in 2020, and it was about how mixtapes are more than just music. It meant something different to everyone who made or received one. For some, it was simply a way to share a piece of yourself with others. And for others, it could be something much deeper. It could be a way to preserve emotions, moments, or people in something that fit in the palm of your hand.
So, what moment stuck with me in this film was I stupidly did not write down her name, but this woman with I think it was like a kind of a red bob was talking about how there was only that you could make the perfect mixtape, but there would be one song that would kind of break the flow of it. So I think that's really shows how human the making a mixtape can be, because it's kind of like a slip and a brush stroke on a painting, but it's left in there because at the time you thought it was gonna be a good song, but once you brought it around other people, they probably all laughed in your face and told you to change the mixtape or something. I've had that happen to me with just being on the aux cord in the car. I have this CD that's MTV's 90s party mix, and I've listened to the CD all the way through, and it's a good mix. There wasn't a song that really I thought was bad, but I also, before I even began talking about aura, I did remember feeling oh, this is very mass produced. It doesn't it doesn't have, I don't know, some niche songs or what people were really listening to back in the 90s. It was just generic top 40 party mix. I think that whole idea of just one song messing up the mix is really shows how human and producible a mixtape can be, because if you have one song that's messed up, you can't give that out to other people.
I think that within that context, even albums, there's very few. I feel like they're referred to as no skip albums, where you're listening to an album where there's always that one song on an album where you're I don't want to listen to this song. This song doesn't fit the vibe of the rest of it. So I think that is also kind of authentically within the realm of mixtapes. There's always gonna be that one song that you're I don't know why I added this, or I added this for myself, not for anyone else, which is authentically you, which I think kind of lends itself to the argument that Benjamin is making in his article of not being able to mass produce something that is authentically you, or that because it's one song or even a couple of songs.
I feel like this is kind of similar in a way how we all have ideas of perfect albums and how, but there might be this one song on that you don't really like and you will skip that. But when also creating an album, how there are bands who are we have this album that's full of absolute bangers and it's going to do so well. And then it turns out that only one of those actually does well. And the example that comes to mind is Toto's Africa, because Africa wasn't even originally supposed to be on that album at all. And it almost didn't make it. And I just do kind of wonder what would have happened with the album. Would the album have been as successful if they thought it was going to be, if if Africa wasn't on it? And Africa just completely outshone the rest of them, or did the band just think it wasn't just thought it was a lot better than they actually were? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can also say that reverse effect though, right? Where you have this album where there's a bunch, or there's only one good song and then all the rest are not as great. You could kind of say the reverse of that, to be honest with you. There's one standout song that you will always remember versus a bunch of filler songs. It's everyone goes to one album for that one song and that's it. So you can also say the reverse.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of the point of a mixtape, which is kind of why we probably watch a film where like, yeah, in every album there's always gonna be like that one song that stands out. So like mixtapes allowed before like, I mean, I make playlists all the time, but like before you can just like make a playlist, you had to like pick songs off of albums and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of like the point of like, yeah, there's always gonna be like that those good songs from any album that you want to pull away from the rest of the maybe mediocre album to make sure that like you make it your own, basically making your own album when you make a mixtape.
I don't know, this is a very like specific experience, but you know how like Spotify or Apple Music will kind of create like a daily mix or whatever based off or whatever you're listening to. I feel like, I mean, they're never like really that good, but when they're like bad, like you don't even want to continue. But I feel like if you look back at maybe like some playlists that you used to listen to all the time, and then now you like outgrew them. If you like find songs that you don't like anymore, I feel like you're still more like inclined to listen to that music rather than like this like manufactured version of like a mix of what you used to like.
I think we can probably move on to the next point if we wanted to. And I think, Peter, you wanted to go next?
Yeah, so Benjamin was also, the whole point of that article was about aura and what makes something aura. And I think one of the things that he would have liked about mixtapes or would have suggested that mixtapes at least have the potential to have aura is the fact that mixtapes are all to an extent unique because each one was created to fulfill a specific purpose, and that purpose and that mixtape together cannot really be replicated. But I feel like both of those individually can be replicated. Like the purpose can be replicated, the mixtape can be replicated, but together that will never genuinely be replicated. And that authenticity is what can give the mixtape, actual aura.
I think that's true. Kind of my point from the film. We kind of combined our 2 points. Kind of goes directly against yours. Henry Rollins mentions at one point that he has a recording of an original mixtape that he made that he discovered in his friend's car when he was like, I really like this mixtape. And his friend said, yeah, you made it a couple years ago. And he then re-recorded it from the original recording. So that kind of is not mass production, but it is able to reproduce one of the same. So just kind of both of those, both can be true at once. Being original, but also being able to make another, which like leads to the question, which I like just kind of thought of like, if you make an album for like a girlfriend and then you get that recording back, do you just give that to your next girlfriend or do you make like a new one? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
No,
that's the same. Well, if they're like same songs,
but
it's like re-gifting a gift.
Yeah,
you don't do it.
Doesn't know. The girlfriend doesn't know.
It's crazy.
I feel like they usually, isn't that a whole thing? Like they always find out.
But
no, like if you're actually like, if you're serious about the mixtape, you're not about to do that because different songs for different people, like they mean different things. Like imagine if you had like a song. What if you like forgot? Oh. What if you have like your ex-girlfriend's name is Caroline and you have like Sweet Caroline in the mixtape and then you give it to your next girlfriend named like Grace? Like you can't do that.
Yeah, then there's gonna be a lot of questions that come with that.
Imagine that you get married to somebody and then you have a certain song as your song or your first dance song, and then you get divorced and then you have that same song for your next wedding. It's like that's ridiculous.
Like, short-term relationship.
At least you know the lyrics.
Yeah, right? Like you know the lyrics, like, you can sing like I'm sorry. Like not to like point out, like I feel like when I watched the Barbie movie, which this is going to circle back, I swear to God. I swear it's gonna circle back. No, like the idea of like the Kens all sitting and singing the same song at the Barbie, like I feel like that is a universal experience. Like at some point in every woman's life, a man will sit down and sing a song to you. And like that feels like the same thing in a mixtape. Like, what if they're all shit songs that your boyfriend gave you? Like, what if you're like sitting there like God, this man has a terrible taste in music.
That might, I don't
Skill
know
issue.
that.
Yeah, honestly, a skill issue, to be honest with you.
Like abandoned ship at that point. Like,
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, you
yeah.
gotta make sure you're compatible, and if you just hate the same, if you hate if you have just completely different music tastes, it's okay to have different music tastes. But if you hate your partner's music taste, and that's on the same level as other incompatibilities.
yeah,
It's like
truly.
one hand, like you could either have Playboy Cardi or Taylor Swift, and those two are not matching. Like,
It's Taylor Swift or me. One of us has to go.
yeah.
Sorry, that was off topic, but it came back kind of a little bit. Not really, but
You
I
get the
mean, you
idea.
know, the Kens all in a circle singing the same song is like reproduced
yeah,
me.
I've never seen the Barbie movie.
you should watch it. It's really funny.
I
Yeah.
know I should.
But sorry, back to the mixtapes. But like the idea of them being reproducible is like still true. Like you can't say that you can't reproduce a mixtape. I mean, they're all going to be like a little bit different. There's probably going to be like buffer room that are different, but
I was gonna talk about the labor it takes to making like a mixtape, like the amount of effort you have to put in, like you guys said earlier, the careful selection of songs and stuff like that, and like making it your own, like making it your own personal object and stuff like that. So I was gonna say it's marked by its like own personal touch, really. Like when you're making your own mixtape, like you like throw in songs that you like that like from now and like songs that you've always like stuck with and stuff like that. So like you're curating it to be your own versus just having like one album. Like having one album, having a bunch of songs you don't like, bunch of songs maybe you do like. Instead, you're just making that one mixtape is literally your own. And it's it's bound to like yourself in a way. And you can't really replicate it because it's yours, it's your liking, it's like not based off of other people, stuff like that. It's just curated to yourself, basically.
yeah.
Yeah. Because like you said, it is they put a lot of effort into it and they like a lot of hours, a day's work. And if you mess up and it takes a lot to go back and fix it. And there was the one person in the film, I don't remember which one it was, who said that I believe it was it was a woman, but she said that it doesn't matter who gives this to me. If someone gives me a mixtape, I will not listen to it. Imagine spending 8 hours on something carefully crafted to for somebody and finding out they just never listen to it. I personally would be insulted.
Yeah, that's
I feel like there's also like an element of like I don't know how to say it well, so it's gonna be kind of half-baked thought. You can go off of it of like I know like personally we have so many mixtapes in my house, like so many mixtapes and no way of listening to them. What's the point? Like truly, I need somebody to explain it to me. Like, yes, like my dad, they're mostly my dad's. Like my dad put the time and effort into making mixtapes and then didn't keep a device to listen to them on. And now, even now, like when you look on like online shops for musicians, they're bringing mixtapes back.
yeah.
I
And
And
think I think
vinyl records are becoming more popular
yeah,
too.
like listening to like I feel like it's like part of the idea of like having physical media, like this fear of like media being able to be taken away from you if you do not have the physical copy. Like even like on TikTok when the music company was like, "Oh, we don't want you using our music anymore," and took all the songs off. Like that
Right.
was not that like that's the same thing, but like the idea of like them being able to take away the media from us without us having it somewhere else. So I think like vinyls and mixtapes are coming back. I and vinyl is a far more expensive version of mixtapes because you have to have the recorder, not the recorder, you have to have the record player and records take up space. I mean, the mixtapes, every single person in that film had like walls of mixtapes. So I guess they're not necessarily easier to hide, but I feel like spatially, maybe
You
it's
also
easier.
have to come up with like a categorization system for them as well. If you do actually re-listen to them as opposed to just having them sort of on display,
Mhm.
because otherwise you could be searching for hours for a specific one if you're looking for like a specific song.
Yeah.
I think to add to that, when you're talking about like your father's like mixtapes and stuff like that, I feel like if you like go and ask him like right now, like what he was doing and stuff like that while he was making them and stuff like that, or when he got them, like they hold specific moments of time in your life, and it captures your own personality pretty much, and it's like a reminder of, oh, who you were at like this point of time, what you were going through. So I think it's like a nostalgia, like memory factor that's also with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
During the film, they had a bunch of people in it, obviously, you've all seen it, but most of them did all share the same view of it being a very, nostalgic thing, great way to share a piece of yourself or whatever in music. But for I think one or two of them, it really was nothing more than just a way to store music. So
Mm.
a lot of people our age, I think, do see mixtapes and vinyls and just older sorts of keeping music and holding on to music as a nostalgic way, but also that was an actual time period, and people did legitimately use this because sometimes it can be hard to imagine a time before technology, right?
Yeah.
It's
And
like this is how people lived. It's not just a nostalgic fantasy for a lot of us.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like a measurement
Yeah,
of time in a way.
even if
Yeah.
sorry.
go for
Um,
it.
oh, I feel like even if you're just using the mixtapes to store music, there still is that still holds a lot of like value because like unintentionally you're grasping like what you were listening to at that like very time and what was important, what music was important enough for you to like hold on to it for forever. I definitely think there's like a sense of aura and that like kind of like nostalgic aura to just like storing, using it for storage.
On that idea, I do wonder if there are tapes out there, whether or not they're mixtapes sponsored, but if there are tapes out there, sort of like that other one that we watched, but of people who just have these mixtapes or these tapes of songs that they heard on the radio, but were never actually, you know, kept on something, and that's the only version of that song that exists.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's even true now. Like, especially with like social media and artists teasing songs and then like the songs never being released. Like I can think of like a couple of Lana Del Rey songs that like she like there's like full versions of the song somewhere, but they were never in an album or officially released. Or like Chappell
Right.
Roan's Subway, which she said she's not going to release. I think maybe she will. I'm not saying that I know that for sure, but like these songs that exist on social media, but there's no way of getting it off of. I mean, there are ways of getting it off of social media, obviously, but you'll never have like the studio recording of it. And
You could
like,
Right.
say, yeah, you could say that about like freestyles. I don't know if you guys are like familiar with like freestyles and rap or something like that, but like those are just off the cuff, right? And if you're like, they're only remembered if you record them, and if they're not, they're pretty much gone forever. So like, I feel like freestyles and rap also like goes along with what you're saying and stuff like that.
And then if you try and replicate it in a studio, it loses its originality, you
yeah,
know?
Mhm.
Yeah. I also feel like it kind of loses like a bit of aura and just like I don't know, I've never seen. That's not true. I have I have like cousins who like were into freestyling for like a while and they like got pretty good at it. And definitely being seeing them kind of go off the dome in person is way cooler than seeing like a video of it because like if you don't know that it was a freestyle then you just like assume kind of that it was pre-written, you know. So I feel like when you record like this is sorry, this is so off track. When you record a freestyle, it it loses a bit of aura points.
no, I
Um,
think I think that's a good point. I mean, I think even like with prevalence of phones, like even concerts, like when people are just recording the concert instead of being in the moment, like
Ugh.
it must be so frustrating for a musician who's like creating this like show that they're putting up. I mean, theater's the same. Like there's like this aura that they create that is being completely sidetracked or derailed by the use of phones and recording devices within the shows. And I think that like takes away aura in a different way, perhaps than
And if I could sort of like piggyback on top of that, I do it's if you because there are videos online of people, recording at concerts, and then there will be a few comments of people being like, "Hey, just put your phone down and live in the moment," right? But occasionally there are the artists who do say, I think Bruno Mars is one of them, and Coldplay does it for a few of their songs. They're like, "Please don't have your phones out for either the performance or the specific song," and then people will still record it. And people will get flamed in the comments. But if you ever see a video of somebody recording something in a theater, there's not going to be a single positive comment of people being like, "Hey, thanks for recording this," or "Hey, that was really cool." It's all be like, "Hey, why do you have your phone on your theater? That's extremely disrespectful. Put that shit away," you know? And that's just
I mean, that's
Hmm?
true, but also theater kids love slime videos, which is the that basically because you can't say that it is a recording of a show because then you'll get in trouble for it. But if people like, especially shows that had very short runs, and like sometimes people are like, thank God that somebody recorded that because one, they're not big Broadway shows, they're smaller off Broadway that don't end up going to Broadway, so fewer people can see them. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying like theater kids eat that up. And I
I'm just telling you what I noticed from the comments section as an
Yeah.
outsider. Because I wasn't much of a theater kid but growing up. I wish I was, but I wasn't. So this is just what
but
I
yeah,
see
it
from
was
my
it was hell,
scrolling.
it was hell on earth. I promise you did not want to be a theater kid. But
The only good comment section I've seen from like recordings of concerts is pretty sure it was the Travis Scott concert where it's at Rolling Loud, where someone recorded the whole thing on a Nintendo 3DS. So,
That's
which was pretty solid and it looked pretty cool.
funny. When it's
Yeah,
I think it's okay, but like
exactly.
when it's especially like I feel like the bigger issue is like I feel like so many concerts now have professional recordings. Like
Yeah.
that's what the actual issue is. Like there's going to be a movie, there's going to be professional recordings of this show. Like you don't need to be doing it. And also there's like this video that I saw recently where it's like a Tyler the Creator and Doechii comes out and everyone is just recording and not singing. And you're like, no, you gotta be louder for that. Like that's like a moment that is happening. And it's like almost dead silent in the crowd, and you're like, it's not the point of going to a concert. Which I think we've actually segued very far away from the actual
very,
point of
very,
this video. But
I don't know.
I
I still think this is all on topic of the idea of aura, you
yeah,
know?
I think it's still
Yeah.
on the idea of aura. So I think we're okay. I just feel like
Yeah. That DS video was fire. I'm not gonna lie. It was pretty cool.
I think that all these ideas of like Benjamin has a point of like the mass production is part of the problem
Right.
or mass replication is part of the problem because like you want the video, you want the memory, you want your own memory forever. And it's like part of it's like, yeah, fair, but the other part of it's like, but you'll have the memory.
I think that actually does directly talk about about the whole concerts and recording concerts with your phone versus professional recordings. Because if you record something, um, I don't record stuff when I go to concerts. I don't go to many, but I don't take my phone out. But that's irrelevant. But if you do, I do understand why people do it because like this is from my point of view, this is exactly how I saw it. Yes, there is going to be a professional recording, but that does not exactly, you know, show how I, as myself, had experienced it. That is how everybody else will experience it. But this is just my personal experience.
Yeah.
And I think that There's like, that goes down in levels of aura, they're being there, that seeing the live production, because I believe that we said that, live music does have, or, and then, a personal recording of it could have a little bit, but not nearly as much. But, anything below that just doesn't have any of it because that's when anybody can do it.
Yeah. And I
No.
think it's also like, how good is your recording going to be?
Oh, absolutely
The other part
shit.
of it, like, it's not going to be a good recording.
Also, are you really going to go back and look at it? No, you are not.
No, not. Nah. Yeah. No, that's why I only take like maybe like 3 10-second videos max.
I
Yeah.
saw Fall Out Boy 2 summers ago. The only recording I have from that was halfway through that stage when I forgot his name, but the lead singer sat down at a piano and started singing "Don't Stop Believing." That is the only recording I have of that show. I do not have anything else from it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hate recording concerts.
Anything else anyone wants to say before we start wrapping up?
Well, I do have this one quote from it, it's kind of screenshotted, I believe. But one of the things that Benjamin was talking about is that if I was understanding correctly, he talked about how things lose aura sort of as reproduction of that thing becomes easier. So does he think that, the original item loses the aura, or is it only the reproductions that lose the aura?
I think my understanding at least was that it's everything that loses the aura. It's not just the replications because the replications then lessen the value of the original. Although, like he brought up comics in one of the classes, I do think an original of a comic is going to be worth more than a reproduction of the comic. But also, like
Yeah.
it's the same thing of like variant covers for comic books nowadays. Like those have more value than the rest of the comic books that are the same comic book, but they don't have the chase cover. Even like in collections of like Funko Pops or something like that, there's like chase variants that are more valuable because they're not exactly like everything else that is mass produced. So I think it really depends.
And
Yeah.
then, I was wondering about this because one of the things you talked about is how, or was sort of how it was the Louvre, I believe, that the Mona Lisa's in, right?
Right.
Am I right about that? But the only reason that the Mona Lisa is even famous isn't because it's an objectively good painting, it's because it has a fun backstory. Would it still have any of that if it didn't have that story?
I think that's a good question. I know too much about Da Vinci for several reasons. I did a very long paper about one of his paintings, but I think some of the aura does come from the artist because there's only one Da Vinci. There's only one. I can't think of a single other artist right now. I'm in an art history class right now. I should be able to think of a second artist or Picasso. There's only one Picasso. His art is very similar to another artist, but I don't need to get into that. There's only ever one artist that does these things. Like you get famous and then your art is worth more. That's just how art,
Especially after you're dead.
yeah, especially after you're dead. Or I guess Van Gogh would have been a better reference for like you get famous after you die. Because
I don't know. I feel like, I mean, this is again very specific. No, I think this can apply in my opinion to mostly just paintings, but I feel like sure in theory the like replication of like Starry Night or the Mona Lisa, whatever, in 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 media or like just like having it as a poster like on your wall in your dorm room does kind of like, take away aura, and like that specific poster doesn't really like, I don't want to say it's like tacky, but it's like, that's not the actual Mona Lisa. I don't know. It just, there's no aura to it. But I think once you're standing in front of that painting, then the whole like history kind of comes like flushing out of it,
yeah.
and you can really feel feel it. So I don't know if just like mass producing something takes, it might take away like the aura of the original in theory, but like I think once you're really presented with like the original media I think, yeah, like I said, the history comes like rushing out of it somehow. I don't know. That's like a crazy like experience to try to explain, but
No, I think
yeah.
that makes sense. Like there's like some paintings that like especially like I'm sure there's paintings that guys really resonate with, but like the beheading of Jane Grey, or I think that's her name. I think that's that painting's name, where it's like a young woman in a white dress who's about to be beheaded. Like really resonates with a lot of women, and like people will go there to have like an experience with a painting. And I think even if you're have a replication, you can't see like the brush strokes and stuff like that. So it's like and I think a painting is a better example of aura than perhaps mixtapes, but that's just my opinion.
To piggyback
Yeah,
off of
maybe. I mean,
what Aisha said, it loses like I feel like the mix like the alternate variants and stuff like that, like the mass production, like those ones lose more aura than that original because you'll still get that, even though it loses your original experience, your first time seeing it and stuff like that, you still get to see, yeah, that's the original, like he made that or she made that. Like it's right there. So it's like kind of like that awe factor of like that's the first one. Like that's where it all came from, basically.
Next time, we're going to be talking about kitsch and camp
very
around a movie. I
exciting.
don't know what it is yet, but we will find out.
We will find out and it'll be a wonderful time.